Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Discover North Korea, the podcast where I try to show you a side of North Korea that you don't usually see in the media. You won't find any rockets, nuclear weapons, or politics here, but rather I aim to expand that narrative and talk about everything else. Today, I'm going to be taking you to one of my favorite places in North Korea, and it's not really my favorite place for the reason that you might think, or, for any specific reason that you might think. I'll get on to why it's my favorite place in a bit, but firstly, I want to say a massive thank you for coming back to the podcast again. If you don't know me, I am Zoe from Zoe Discovers. You can find me on social media channels pretty much everywhere: TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. You can find me on YouTube where I upload weekly videos, and you can also email me on zoediscovers@gmail.com. All of my social media handles are either Zoe Discovers or Zoe Discovers NK. All of that information will be in the show notes, and this podcast is a weekly podcast. It comes out every Thursday, also on all of your favorite podcast platforms. If it's not there, then let me know and I will make sure that it is. If you haven't already, then why not spend 1 second to lift your finger and give this podcast a rating, a comment, whatever you can do on the platform that you are currently listening to. It really helps. This is a new podcast. This is only episode 9. We've got a really exciting next episode. It's going to be a guest special. I try and do guest specials every 5 episodes. So we had one at the beginning. I had some some tourists who came with me to North Korea. That was a really fun episode for the first ever episode of this podcast. Then episode 5 was a really cool episode with some people who've been working in North Korea for the past 30 years. Very cool to get their insight. And then finally, episode next week, is going to have one of my favorite people in the whole wide world. We're going to have Greg on. If you haven't ever seen Greg in any of my social media before, then you've obviously never seen any of my social media content before. Greg is one of my favorite people in the world. He's a colleague and also a best friend of mine. He is awesome, and we are going to be chatting all about air choreo. But that's next week. So let's start to get into this week, where we will be chatting about Nampo. A couple of episodes back, I think episode 7, I did an overview of all of the places you can visit in North Korea. From northeast, south to west, from cities to smaller areas, beaches to mountains, and everywhere in between. But because, contrary to popular opinion, there is so much stuff you can do and see in North Korea and in each of these places, we didn't even scratch the surface. We didn't even touch the surface of all of these areas. I literally spent 55 minutes explaining pretty much where these areas are and kind of whether it's beach or mountainous, of these different areas and the cities and stuff like that. Today and for the next few weeks, I'm going to do them sporadically. So obviously not next week, but probably every few episodes, I'm going to pick a city or an area that I talked about in episode 7 to do an entire episode on, to chat about and kind of let you know what there is to do there, but not just on the surface level stuff, not just kind of things like, the hotels there, the bars, the restaurants, the scenery, the tourism stuff. I'll also be talking about some anecdotes, reasons why I like that place, reasons why I don't like that place, and talking about some funny stories of things that may or may not have happened to me whilst I have been there. And we are starting with Nampo, because Nampo is my favorite place. There's nothing super special about Nampo. I have to say, for me, there's a special place in my heart for Nampo, and we'll kind of chat into that. We'll get into that shortly, but this is probably the one that I mentioned the most, and that's also why I wanted to start with it, because if you've ever heard any interviews that I've done, people always ask me that question, what's your favorite place? Do you have a favorite memory and stuff? And I always say Nampo. And so I thought it would be good to kind of explain that area, the whole of Nampo in this episode. If you have a city or a place or an area that you want me to cover next, just send an email, send a message, DM me on Instagram. I don't really read my comments on TikTok, so don't try there, but give me a shout, zoediscovers@gmail.com, or on Instagram @zoediscovers or @zoediscoversnk with all of your recommendations for places that you want me to do next, and I will do that next for you. Also, I just want to put a bit of a disclaimer here. anything outside Pyongyang, I'll probably refer to as like the North Korean countryside, because that's what most people seem to like presume that it is. And, you know, most people use like, I feel like most people, when they say North Korean countryside or like when they say like outside Pyongyang, that's what people like think of as the North Korean countryside, because no one really knows about like the other cities in North Korea. Like North Korea does have massive cities. You know, two massive cities would be Cheongjin and Hamhung. Those are, you know, they're really big cities, but most people just presume that like the rest of North Korea is countryside, and that's not true. Nampo is kind of in the countryside, I guess. It's a city, but it's a relatively small city, especially compared to Pyongyang, and you certainly do drive through a lot of country roads. But yeah, I just want to say, like, I will probably be saying like the North Korean countryside and use it to mean like outside Pyongyang, but that doesn't mean that you know, it doesn't have cities and stuff like that. Sure, you will probably have to drive through countryside a lot of the time to get between these cities. So I just wanted to mention that one. Nevertheless, Nampo does kind of pass as countryside anyway. It's just a short trip outside Pyongyang. Like less than an hour it can be, but it can be anything between like 40 minutes and 2 hours. Just, I don't know, maybe you'll go down some rubbish roads or whatever. Some of the roads can be a bit rough, and there are basically two ways to get there. We'll get on that in a bit. And the city is really very small. The city is not the best bit about Nampo. Anyway, without further ado, let's go to Nampo. So, where is Nampo? Well, if you are listening in a convenient location right now and not mid-jog or pretending to work or something like that, I recommend that you get out a device, even the device that you're using to listen to this on, and just open up Google Maps. You can type in any place in North Korea, and you know, it'll usually come up on Google Maps. Type in Nampo, Nampo, and you will see exactly where I'm talking about. You'll probably see a small city on North Korea's west coast, about 40 minutes drive from Pyongyang, south of Pyongyang, I think. Maybe I need to check on a map as well. And there's actually two ways to get there. The normal way to get there is driving, of course. Actually, there is no other way. Oh no, there is another way. I'll talk to you about that in a minute. Interestingly enough, there is another way. If you are currently looking at a map, then do have a look and see if you can find another way down to Nampo from Pyongyang, because driving takes, you know, between 40 minutes and like 2 hours, depending on the road conditions and which way you take. One is along the Youth Hero Highway, and should take just about 40 minutes, but can take a little longer. And one older route is along the Taedonggang Highway. This takes around 90 minutes, but you know, can be a little longer, a little shorter. You can also stop off along the way to stock up on clams for the evening. Actually, this is exactly where you should get your clams. So before you arrive at the hotel, you want to buy some fresh seafood for the Petrol Clam BBQ that we will be chatting about later. One of the best things in Nampo. So what's the other way that you can get there? Well, actually, you can kayak from Pyongyang. If you were looking at a map, you might have noticed that Nampo lies very close to the Taedonggang River. It's the river that flows through Pyongyang, dividing it between east and west. So you can get into a kayak on this river and float all the way down. Well, not actually float, you have to put in a lot of effort. Go all the way down to Nampo. This is very strenuous, and there is actually a boat as well. So, you know, if you fancied it, you could go on the boat. The boat is the way more local way to go. Foreigners, you know what? I can't remember. I remember asking my colleagues, like, if my colleagues in North Korea, if I could do the boat thing, and I think maybe there was some problem. Maybe they're not running anymore, or at that time, or you know, maybe it wasn't an okay thing for foreigners. I can't remember if anyone at Koryo Tours has ever done it before. Either way, I didn't get a chance to take the boat down, and I only know a couple of my colleagues in the past who have done the kayaking, and they said that it pretty much took like half a day or the whole day. It's very strenuous, and they kind of didn't recommend me to do it. So I was still really interested in doing kayaking in North Korea because, you know, what a story. And also it's just really fun to be on the Taedonggang, come on. So I actually did it in the summer in 2019. I did it with Mr. Lee. Everyone knows Mr. Lee. He appears a lot in my channel. And we just had a really nice time. We got some beers, and we were just, kayaking along the river for a couple of hours. And you know, sometimes we'd like perch at the side, have a few beers in the shade, and then keep going. It was super chill. But I'm not sure that Mr. Lee was so happy that I made him do kayaking, actually. Because yeah, you can't just do that by yourself. And we were also very aware that there were people along the riverside, like casually following us and checking us. So yeah, there was that. But either way, you can kayak. You would have to bring your own kayak, or you can borrow some from like Koryoto's own kayaks in North Korea, I guess. So the normal way to get to Nampo is definitely driving. That's what 99% of the people do. So Nampo, it's a major port city on the west coast of North Korea, on the northern side of the mouth of the Taedonggang River. This Taedonggang River flows from the northern provinces and runs out to the Korea Bay. So this means that Nampo serves as Pyongyang's port city. It grew into this name of major port city in 1945 after World War II. And around this time, it kind of became a major industrial center, thanks to investment from the state. Today, it's an area pretty famous for its seafood, or clams to be precise, and some nice beach areas on a sunny day, on a weekend or national holiday. You can imagine, since it's pretty close to Pyongyang, located just a short drive away, you can easily do it in a day trip from Pyongyang. It's a popular location for local North Koreans to travel, although I do have to say, I think Wonsan is much more popular. It's more of like a 2 or 3 hour drive away, and on completely the different side of the country, on the west coast, on the east coast. But Wonsan does have like, I don't know, it's more popular, it's a bigger city, it's more fun and stuff like that. Obviously Nampo, you know, you can do it in a day trip. Maybe we'll do Wonsan next if you guys like beaches. So Nampo is not entirely open to tourism, actually. You can't really like walk around the city itself like you can do in Wonsan, for example. You know, when you get to Nampo, it's not really about seeing Nampo City or walking around there or going to the shops there. It's more kind of about seeing the different sites in Nampo, of which there are a handful. Some of those sites are off limits. One of which, a previous very, very popular tourist destination, we'll get onto that in a minute. I don't know, maybe it's not off limits, but it definitely hasn't been available to be visited since I've been working in North Korea tourism. But despite it not being entirely open for tourists, there are, you know, various places outside and a few inside Nampo which are definitely worth visiting. So we're going to explore those now. First off, one of the most famous sites in Nampo, and probably the most epic, certainly the biggest, I guess, the West Sea Barrage. Alright, so this is an 8-kilometer concrete, steel and earthen barrage constructed between the Taedonggang River estuary and the west side and the West Sea, basically for land reclamation, irrigation, flood prevention and power generation. So it basically means that one side is sea and one side is river. It's really, you know, it's considered as one of the biggest feats of engineering in the whole of North Korea. North Koreans are very, very proud of the West Sea Barrage, and they'll talk about it very, very fondly, and it's of great importance actually to them. It employed 30,000 soldiers, countless thousands more civilians, and took 5 years to build. Actually, it took 5 years, 280,000 tons of steel, and 1,100,000 tons of cement, and millions of cubic meters of gravel and sand. They basically took all of this stuff, deposited it into the sea/river to create, like, you know, try to basically separate these two things and create this wall between the two waters. Absolutely bizarre. An estimated $4 billion later, and you are left with sea on one side and river on the other, with the top actually providing a very vital road and rail connection between the North Hwanghae province and South Pyongan provinces. It is this road that you will drive down to when you want to visit this place, which, you know, pretty much everyone does when they go to Nampo. It would be a shame not to, and you will definitely see it. It will be important for your travel too. It is incredible when you look on one side and see sea, and then you look on one side and you see water. It's a very, very interesting place to see. When you go there, you do have to sit through a 5 or 10 minute presentation. But honestly, you know what? You get there and it's one of those things where you're like, oh, okay, it's another site. And then you see it and you're like, huh, okay, what is this? Because I was guilty of this too when I first saw it. I was like, okay, I'm kind of interested now. What is it? And then you sit down for the presentation and you're like, okay, great. At least they have free coffee. You know, I don't even know if it's free. Maybe it's like €1, whatever. You know, at least they have coffee. So you sit down. And then if you don't fall asleep during this presentation, honestly, try and stay awake because it is so interesting, the detail and lengths that they went to build this thing, and it is quite an impressive feat. You watch this presentation before you then go for a walk around outside, and I just really recommend listening to this presentation. I don't want to go into it too much detail today. I could probably talk about just the barrage alone for the next hour. I'm definitely not going to though, so don't worry. But I would definitely recommend having a look online. Just Google West Sea Barrage. I'm going to put a link in the show notes to basically like a travel guide that we have at Koryo Tours about Nampo and about the West Sea Barrage. So if you're interested, just have a look. Even if you just want to look at the pictures, would recommend it. It is pretty impressive and, you know, it's only a little stopover anyway. Second up, we have the Nampo Taean Glass Factory. Now, I do have a video on YouTube for anyone that's interested and wants some visuals. Yeah, I have a whole, like, it's just a few minute video displaying this glass factory. I recently put a picture on Instagram as well, showing a very interesting propaganda piece of art at the Nampo Taean Glass Factory. Here, when you visit, you can basically see where the glass in North Korea is produced. You can see the furnace where the glass is made and shaped, and you can see the control area where imperfect pieces are basically shattered and made again. Honestly, very bizarre. You walk in and yeah, you you walk around these furnace areas, and you like there are steps up to so you walk into this door of the factory. It's exactly what it looks like. It's a massive factory, and you kind of walk in through a dodgy side door. And you are just hit with the heat. It's a beautiful, beautiful place to walk around when it is cold outside. But when it is 30 degrees outside, you want to go in there and get out as quick as possible because you are literally walking through furnaces. It's definitely one of my favorite places to visit just for like the bizarreness of it, and for the lack of health and safety measures, I have to say. Honestly, when I was writing, I remember writing a blog about this, and I genuinely did say like I genuinely do say like it's not really suitable for kids. You know, if you're okay to watch out for your kids, then it's fine. But there can be like glass flying around when they're doing like this imperfect glass testing bit, and yeah, there is the opportunity to just basically like they put out little ladder things at the sides of the furnaces so you can like get a closer look in. So you just, yeah, I mean, they do have barriers a little bit, but you can just walk up these steps and then you can like look into the furnace. Literally impossible to get your head at the same like level of it though, because like, I mean, it is possible, but as soon as you do that, it's very, very hot and you get down straight away. After this furnace area, you then carry on walking and then you can see these sheets of glass that have been produced, and they'll basically be sent like down a really, really long line, and I guess this line is like the quality test and control. At the end of this line, for those sheets of glass that do not pass, then they get shattered to be remade again, and this is where the glass can be flying around. To be fair, I never get close enough to find out if there is actually glass flying off the conveyor belt, but this thing like literally just smashes up that glass. So, you know, I'm sure little bits of glass at least are getting everywhere. So do watch out for that. Don't get too close. If you want to see a video of that, I do have that on YouTube. This factory opened in October 2005, originally with significant Chinese investment. You can also look around the introduction room, which features a model of the factory, as well as photos of Kim Jong-il, President Hu, and the then Chinese Foreign Minister Wu Yi. The whole place of Nampo factory is actually really interesting because the factory is not just the building itself, but it actually has like this whole little complex to it. When you go in, you'll be greeted by like a concrete wall, and then you'll drive through into the complex where you'll park the bus, and then you'll head first to the factory area. And then outside, you can then go for a walk around the complex. Honestly, it's really nice and green, and like there's nice cute little statues and just kind of a lot going on, like play areas and stuff like that. It's quite nice. Next up, we have the infamous Cholima Steelworks. Now, I did mention at the start that one of the most famous tourist sites in North Korea, in Nampo, has for a few years not been open to the public, at least. And this is the one that I was talking about. So Cholima Steelworks definitely used to be the most famous thing about visiting Nampo, but I've been working in North Korea for like since between 2017 and 2020. Pretty much, and Cholima Steelworks was never open during that time, or I mean it might have been open, but it's definitely not available for tourists to go and see. So it's a big shame that I haven't been there, but before that it was one of the biggest and most popular things to do in Nampo. So I will go over it quickly. There's a very, very famous painting that depicts the Cholima Steelworks as well, and I definitely recommend looking that up on Google. You can probably just type in like Cholima Steelworks painting North Korea or something like that. It's a fantastic portrait. It's a fantastic painting, and it currently hangs, I think, in the Central Art Gallery in the middle of Kim Il-sung Square. So what is the Steelworks? Well, let's start from the beginning. So basically, it is a very major heavy industry site in North Korea, and it's known as the birthplace of the Cholima movement. For this reason, it played a very important role in North Korea's history, and it's very famous for its juche steel production. It's located on a rail line as well as on the Taedonggang River itself. This provides a way for the material produced to be sent out to the rest of the country. It was first opened under Japanese occupation, actually, and during that time it was called Kangson Steelworks, but also commonly going by the name of the company that operated at the time. Yes, you guessed it, it was Mitsubishi, that Japanese company we all know. After liberation from the Japanese, the place was then stripped and, completely kind of basically destroyed. Any attempt to rebuild it was pretty much futile since it was then bombed in the Korean War anyway. So if they tried to repair and rebuild anything, unfortunately it was then bombed. After this, the Cholima movement was then launched in order to rebuild the nation largely flattened by the bombs. And you may be asking yourself by now, what is Cholima? Why do I keep hearing it? So Cholima is basically a mythical winged horse. I think it's in Chinese mythology, actually. And as per its name, it actually means thousand-ri horse. And you may be thinking, that explains absolutely nothing to me. And, well, you would be correct because, those things mean nothing, right? So Cholima basically means that, so ma is horse, ri is an ancient kind of, or like Korean way of measuring things. I think 1 ri is 400 meters in like metric measurements. And then chol in Korean means 1,000. So you have cholima, which means 1,000 ri horse. It basically means that it can ride like vast distances at a very, very fast speed. And it came to represent how North Korea rebuilt itself after the war at crazy speeds. Actually, North Korea now has malima, mal meaning 10,000. So now you have a 10,000 ri horse, but more on that on a different episode. So steel was obviously very important in this rebuilding process of the Cholima movement, and Kim Il-sung ordered high production for the production of steel. The workers then actually produced double this. They reportedly doubled their production from 60,000 to 120,000 tons, and it kind of spurred on the whole Cholima movement. And as a result, this factory became a very, very important factory in the DPRK. There is also a museum inside that you can go and visit. Tourists aren't allowed to visit the main steel rollers. It's probably a lot more dangerous than the glass factory. But you do wear a hat and see smelters and other massive machines and stuff like that emitting vast clouds as the molten steel is cooled and then reheated. So pretty cool and very photographic. Would definitely recommend heading over to Google whilst you're listening to me blabbering along and looking at some photos of the Cholima Steelworks. Next up in Nampo is the Nampo Sparkling Water Factory. Water that is even better than Perrier, as they will say. The main manufacturers of the main brand of sparkling water in North Korea is the Nampo factory sparkling water. You will actually find this sparkling water being sold all around North Korea, but why not get some fresh from the source? The factory was renovated and opened in 2005, with this time with investments from South Korea. The company exported heavily to South Korea in 2005, but by 2008, such kind of initiatives were banned, and eventually, the contract was torn up, so the export market for this product disappeared. Instead, now they kind of concentrate on the domestic market, although they do say that they export to China and some parts of Southeast Asia and various other countries. The water that you will find here is naturally carbonated. It's called yaksu, and it's a very popular drink by Pyongyangers and everyone alike in North Korea. Naturally carbonated, meaning obviously that like the water is naturally fizzy, which to me is honestly a really bizarre kind of concept. And I really don't think that there are many areas in the world where you get this naturally carbonated fizzy water. It does have a slight aroma of sulfur as you are walking around the well area, as well as kind of the water itself. It's kind of salty and has that kind of sulfur aspect to it. But it's delicious, and it's also believed to have mysterious curative powers. The story goes that once a farmer saw an injured crane drinking from this water, and then it was miraculously healed after drinking the water. From that day on, Kangso became known as a place with magic water flowing up from the depths. The cool thing about this factory is obviously you go on a tour inside. I'll walk you through that very, very quickly. Basically, you go inside, you have an introduction, and then you see the factory area. If you're cheeky, when you're seeing the production line and all of the water being bottled, by the way, when you see it bottled, you'll be seeing it bottled into Taedonggang, not into Taedonggang bottles maybe, but you'll see it being bottled into like green bottles. They look like beer bottles, and they are often recycled beer bottles and stuff like that. You'll see it being bottled into them. This is for domestic use, so this is not exported. This is for use inside North Korea. The export stuff is in a blue plastic bottle, and that is nicely packaged for export. But yeah, the local stuff is the one that you will be seeing being bottled in the factory. And if you're feeling extra cheeky, why not, whilst you're there, just ask for a nice sip. And they'll probably bring out a whole crate of beer-looking bottles for you to enjoy, a very, very fresh, literally off the conveyor belt water, literally out of the well. The machinery as well, which is pretty interesting in this area, is actually imported from Italy, and it's kept very shiny and new-looking. Once you have a look at this production line, you then carry on walking to the end where you'll find a showroom. This showroom contains all the products made by the factory as well as foreign sparkling water products to compare the quality. They will insist that their product is better than Perrier, as I just mentioned. You can then go outside, which is the most fun bit, just a short walk into the forest and fields, to the back of the main building. And factory is the well itself. You can literally go and see this well. It's very cool. From this well, there's a pipe that runs up to the factory, and you can walk right up to the well and you can see this water bubbling out of the well from hundreds of meters below the ground. Pretty cool, to be honest. Up next is Wow Island. Wow, spelled W-A-U, is an island. It's not an island, sorry. It's entirely not an island. It's called Wao-do, but an island it is not. It is a small but kind of pleasant beach area in Nampo. It's not as nice as the next beach we'll talk about, but nevertheless, it's on the banks of the Taedonggang River, and, it's kind of just another place to go to. You don't have to go here. It's not a must-see in Nampo, but if you find yourself with some time and it's a nice day, why not head here? It's kind of like a pleasure ground, so, you've got some things going on. And also, there's a really nice, you can go up to the peak. You can walk up to Wild Peak, which is 50 meters above sea level, so it gives you quite nice views around all the area, people picnicking, the park and stuff like that below. Just a cool, nice place to hang out. better, however, is P Island. Now, I did just mention that Wow Island is called Wow Do, and that's because Do in North Korea or in Korean language means island. P Island, however, I am not going to say the Korean word for it on here. I will leave that to your imaginations as to why. Let's keep it as either P Island or Nampo Beach. This is located just beneath the West Sea Barrage, so usually, you can hook these two up on a trip. The beach is a great location for kind of a quick dip in the sea, to be honest, or relax with a barbecue, swim with the locals. It is such a cool place to be on a national holiday or a weekend or something like that. It's been really busy a couple of times when I've been there on these national days. It's kind of rubbish to go to when no one else is there because it does just look like a sad, empty beach. It's not like white sands and palm trees and stuff, but it is a beach area with sand and with sea that you can swim in despite it looking a little bit dirty. And during the summer months, they have like facilities there, such as hot showers. They also have like what they call gazebo things that you can rent. They have inflatables you can rent. They have, what else do they have? They have just a variety of things. And if you're lucky and go on a national holiday, then you may even see like there's games and stuff like that. Like last time I went and they had like shooting, arcade games, stuff like that. And there was just so many Koreans going. One of my favorite moments in North Korea was seeing just one of these moments where honestly, like, I was just like, oh, they are just humans. I remember walking along the beach and just coming across these three guys who are burying this girl in the sand. And it's just these human moments where I'm just like, that is hilarious. Everyone really is just the same when they go to the beach. You can freely walk around the beach area. There's nowhere that you can walk off, to be honest. So walk to the left as far as you can go. Walk to the right as far as you can go. Would not recommend swimming as far as you can go. Haven't tried that, but yeah. The water is fairly shallow, so it would take you a fair while to go out for a swim. To be honest, you can't really get too deep there unless you really do try and swim out. Again, really wouldn't recommend doing that. And do watch out because I learned the hard way that the sand, once you walk into the sea a little bit more, is very full of shells. So yeah, watch out for that. It hurts. I do have a great video. I mean, I only spent I didn't make a vlog on this because I was just having so much fun, but I think I made like a little short video. It's on my Instagram and also on my TikTok at this beach where there was just hundreds of Koreans one day. I think it was a national holiday and everyone was doing karaoke. There were tons of drunk people, to be honest. It was very funny. Lots of people playing games, and you could just walk around and everyone would invite you to sit over with them and share their alcohol. There was a guy who saw me and then started speaking in French to me, and I was like, this is strange. So yeah, it seemed like they must have been from Pyongyang and on a day trip down to Nampo, something like that. Anyway, lots of fun on a summer's day. And then finally, for Nampo's attractions, before we go on to where you can stay and what you can eat in Nampo, there is Nampo Port. Now, this is usually off limits to foreigners, but it kind of can be visited sometimes. Nampo is actually home to the largest and busiest port in the whole of North Korea. It's a place where all the goods get shipped in and out of the Pyongyang area. Hence why it's so busy. And it is also the main port of entry for boats for humanitarian aid. So if you do visit and visit for, any kind of amount of time, you'll probably see at least something coming in or out. Maybe that's why they don't really like people to be there too much. Maybe, they'd rather be a bit more secretive with this kind of stuff. It's kind of located south of the city centre and inside the West Sea Barrage. So any ships entering here have to pass through the lock system in order to enter the river. It has a container area that you can see, a dry dock for repairs, various warehouses, as well as a small inn and restaurant for foreign seamen who are not permitted to leave the port area. Pretty cool, but you'd have to make a special request to go here, and that might not be granted. So that is pretty much all the things that you can do in Nampo. As I said, there isn't like too many things to do, and definitely half a day or a day is enough. Like usually you might head over to Nampo in the late morning, check out all those sites, stay there in the evening, and then head back to Pyongyang the next day. They can also be done in a whole day, but to be honest, my favorite thing about Nampo is the places to stay, or at least one special place to stay in particular. So if you have the opportunity, I'd recommend staying overnight in Nampo. You can also head here kind of like in the afternoon or evening if you didn't want to do tons of stuff in Nampo. But I'd recommend whilst you're there anyway, you may as well check out all the things that I just said. And you need to make sure that you are in Nampo in time to buy the catch of the day, some fresh clams for your evening stay at the hot spa resort. So I said at the start that Nampo is my favorite place to visit in North Korea. And that's not because, I mean, it's hard to have a favorite place, to be honest, because if you would say, you know, my favorite place for mountains or my favorite place for a city and stuff like that, I have favorite places for various different reasons. But for me, you know, if you were going to ask me one place that I would visit outside of Pyongyang, if I had the opportunity to, it would be Nampo. And actually, it was. Like, I had the opportunity to go somewhere else in North Korea because I was staying there without tourists. And so I could just create my own private tour, which I then did. And I went to Nampo, and it was great. It was just me and the guides, and it was really fun. It was a little bit cold because it was later on in the year, but either way, it was pretty nice and a pretty chill time. So why do I love Nampo so much? Basically, it's because of this hot spa hotel, the Pyongyang Hot Spa Hotel. And it's not that like the hotel is super amazing. I'll talk about the hotel in a second. I just want to say like for me, it's all about the experience that I have in Nampo. And the guides love being in Nampo. So I think that's the reason why. To be honest, the Hot Spa Hotel is pretty secluded, it's pretty closed off, and it's pretty old. And I think the guides really like it because, you know, it doesn't have the same feeling of in Pyongyang of like, you know, everyone's kind of watching you and stuff like that. The Nampo Hotel is very secluded. It's so quiet, it's so old, and it's just I can feel it, you know. When describing it to you guys now, I can really feel what the atmosphere is there is like, and I can say that it is dark and it is quiet. Like in the night when the lights go off, it's a whole entire resort area, so you can walk around, and we have to tell people that they have to take torches or a phone with them because it is pitch black. And when I say pitch black, I mean really, really pitch black, zero light pollution. It is hard to know where your location is that you're staying because it's a whole resort area. It's massive. You actually have to like walk a good few minutes between each of the little hut things. And so you can very easily get lost. You can't get lost quite out of the compound. Like if you eventually tried to walk out and got so lost that you tried to walk out, then I'm sure someone would stop you. You then might come to some street lights and stuff, but the compound itself doesn't have any lights. So it's very, very dark. It's so crisp and clear, the air. You can just feel it. It's very, very crisp. Even in the summer at night, you can just feel this clean air, and the sky is always just so gorgeous. And it's so silent, you know? Like I said, Nampo is not a big city. It's in the kind of countryside area. And it is really just so silent there. And Nampo just has this great vibe where... Okay, so I'll walk you through what happens. So you basically arrive at the gates to this hot spa resort, and then you, the way that it's laid out is basically you drive up to the check-in area. And now this check-in building is basically the hub of the resort area. It is where the reception is, it's where the dining hall is, so it's where you're going to have your dinner and your breakfast. If you walk behind it, that is where the main common swimming pool area is. So you've kind of got to, so that is like in the middle, and then to the left and behind it is the main swimming pool area. I'll get onto that in a minute. And then to the right is the huts, the houses where everyone stays. And I have no idea how many there are. I really can't remember. There's probably about 5 or 6 different buildings at least. maybe around that number, maybe a lot more, maybe a lot less. I can't remember. Anyway, you basically walk around this winding road and winding hills, and you've got like little signposts that tell you 1 is this way, and 2 is this way, and 3 is this way, and 4 is this way, and it all gets very confusing. I never know. And some of them can be like a good, like, I don't know, like a 5 or 10 minute walk away. So the bus can, and take you up there if you'd rather do that. If you've got a lot of luggage, the bus can take you up. And then you basically you walk into like this big house thing, and then the house thing is separated into different rooms. And these rooms, I feel like they haven't been renovated since like the 80s or something like that. Like, they are very, very dated, beautifully dated, very, very retro. I have, I think, one picture. You know what? When this episode comes out, I'm going to put all my Nampo pictures onto Instagram, because the thing is, despite it being my favorite place, I have never taken a single video here. Never, ever, apart from the clam barbecue, which we'll get into in a sec. I have never taken a single video here, never vlogged, anything like that, because I love it so much. I always treat it as my, like, okay, this is my chill out place. This is my time to just, like, chill out. I'm not taking any videos, any pictures and stuff like that. So I do have very limited pictures of Nampo, but when this comes out, so when you're listening to it right now, head over to my Instagram. It'll probably be one of the most recent posts, and you can see the pictures of the hot spa resort. Very retro, very cool. Each room has a bed, stuff like that, its own furniture. It's actually really pretty. Some of them have balconies too. And then each one has its own like hot spa facilities. So you'll have this big hot spa bath in there. And basically the water gets turned on between a certain time. So you'll be informed of this at reception, and then you basically have to like leave the tap open on your bath to make sure that the water comes out, because it takes like a couple of hours to fill. It's like a massive hot spa bath. And so basically what we do is like, it's good to kind of like leave that tap running whilst you go for dinner, and then it will be ready for you when you get back. Sometimes it's very, very, very hot. But yeah, it'll be ready for you when you get back from dinner. You can have a nice soak. It's very sulfury, so all those minerals and stuff like that, don't worry, the bath will probably be like really stained yellow and stuff. It's just all the minerals in the water. Don't worry. And then if you would rather have a more like fun kind of communal experience, or you can always do both, like after you have your hot spa bath, and you can also leave the hot spa bath to the morning, because actually it is steaming hot. So if you prefer like a cooler bath, you can leave it till the morning. It will still be warm, trust me. You can go, so if you go for dinner, and then you can go like back down to the left hand side to like the public spa facilities. Now you may actually stay here. So the huts to the right, or like the little houses to the right, they're where some people stay. And then to the left is kind of new rooms. And these are the kind of public hot spa community rooms. Now you won't have your own private personal bath in here, but you do have free access to all of the communal facilities. What's important to know is that if you have your own personal bath, then you have to pay extra for the communal facilities. I can't remember how much it is, but it's worth it if everyone's hanging out in there, because it can be pretty fun. You can get massages. It's a big, massive pool area. There are 2 pools, one's hotter than the other. It's got like things like water jets, massage, like jet chair things, you know what I'm talking about, when they shoot out bubbles. It's really fun. And like the most fun thing about it is like, and the reason why I love this place as well is because like everyone takes part. Like, I mean, the guides, the bus drivers, it's like the place where everyone lets loose. I don't know why. I mean, I think I know why, because like the guides feel more comfortable there. It's just more of a chill vibe. It's not Pyongyang. People are not watching them, their behavior and stuff like that. No one's going to report them. Everyone's just pretty chill, and all the tourists love it as well. And it's just really good vibes all the time. And then the best thing, also I just want to say, like, you really have to make sure that you drink a lot of water, because you're spending a lot of time in very hot water. It is spa facilities. The best thing about Nampo, though, arguably, not all of it's good, but one of the most memorable things is the clam barbecue. Finally got onto that. I keep saying I'll get onto it in a minute. Finally got onto that. It's basically Petrol Clam BBQ. It is what it says. It says on the tin, you know. This is the one thing. I do have a YouTube video on how to construct a clam barbecue and the making of one and the eating of one as well. Basically, yeah, they take petrol and they get it in a plastic bottle. It's very technical, honestly. They get it in a plastic bottle and then they pierce a hole in the top of the lid and basically get like a stone slab. Actually, these stone slabs are usually out there like in the little forest area already, in like the park area within this resort. And they get clams that have been freshly harvested, like freshly taken from the coast, and you put them in like a spiral shape around this circular stone slab, and you put them facing downwards. Very important, you put them facing downwards, so like the opening is facing down. And so you kind of stack them in a spiral, going around the circle from the outside in. And then once they're all stacked, they should be standing there nicely. You basically start throwing petrol on them with this kind of makeshift petrol bottle, and then you set fire to them and you keep putting petrol on them for like 5 or 10 minutes, and then they're cooked, and it is really quite the spectacle to watch. But you're watching, you know, the clams being cooked. It's a very cool experience, and you can also give it a try yourself as well. But also it's a spectacle to watch everyone look on in horror at what is going on in front of them. I can tell you, everyone is always too terrified to try the clams, but then once one person does, everyone does, and everyone loves it. We do, however, say, I mean, the North Koreans very much recommend, and I also very much recommend, drinking some soju with the clams. I think this helps stop any poisoning, food poisoning, or upset stomachs that might happen after. Actually, to be honest, I have never known anyone to get any stomach problems from the clams. Obviously, people have stomach problems in North Korea, but never from the clams. I think it's probably down to excessive soju consumption. Another reason why Nampo is so much fun. Anyway, that's the Petrol Clam BBQ. Definitely have a look on some of my social media channels for the images of that, because it's just so much fun. If hot spa facility is not for you, do not fear. You can always just stay in your room and chill out and enjoy the peace and tranquility of Nampo. Oh, I love it. Or alternatively, you can try out a round of ping pong. There are entertainment facilities such as ping pong tables, which everyone seems to love. Honestly, Nampo just gets a little bit wild, you know, like there are people everywhere. You can't keep track of everyone. The facilities are really, really big. I can't be in places at all the same time, so I'm just looking for where the action is, but like there could be some people in like the public like facilities splashing about in like pretty much like the swimming pools that are there. There could be people playing ping pong, still in the restaurant drinking, people drinking in their own little house areas with soju, clam barbecue, stuff like that. There's just a lot going on. It's a lot of fun. Lot of love for the hot spa resort. But there is also another place that you can stay in Nampo called the Hangul Hotel. So this is like a quirky hotel close to Wow Island. I've never actually been there myself, but apparently it's very cool, with like old retro looking rooms, kind of similar to like old USSR ones. It's very old and worn down, but there are some cool photos and murals that you'll find along the wall, including one big one, which is pretty cool, that says Dokdo, the island of Korea. So if you don't know about Dokdo, this is the island that both Japan and Korea still to this day fight over who owns it. It's a pretty hot topic, not just in North Korea, indeed just on the Korean peninsula. If there is one thing that North and South Korea agree on, it is that Dokdo is indeed Dokdo. It is theirs and not Japan's. It's Hangul Hotel is it's kind of this nautical themed hotel. It's kind of good for late arrivals or early departures for those, because it's not so fun to like arrive at the hot spa resort when it's already super late. It's also good for those just wanting a kind of different experience. Maybe you've been to Nampo before and you're looking for to stay somewhere new. It also has a really nice banquet hall and a seafood restaurant. One notable thing about it is the front of the building actually has portraits of both Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong-il. That's something that's pretty rare on hotels in North Korea. Initially, it was a solo portrait of Kim Il-sung, but after the passing of Kim Jong-il, his portrait was added too. The slogan beneath it reads, "The great comrades Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong-il will always be with us." This is a slogan that can be found on various monuments across the country. Again, if you want to see an image of this, I will put in the show notes where you can find more information on the Hanggu Hotel. And to be honest, that's it, guys. There's only pretty much these two places. There is one other place to stay in Nampo, but I don't have too much information on that. And, there may be further ones that tourists can't stay in. But that's pretty much the places that you can stay in Nampo. We also went over pretty much everything that you can do in Nampo, but hey, who knows, maybe there will be a lot more that we can do when we can finally go back to North Korea. I know this one was a little bit of a short one today, but I want to say a massive thank you for coming back, and I really hope that you enjoyed this one. Do let me know the next ones that you want to hear in the future. Nampo is pretty small, and the thing that I love about Nampo the most is not because there's lots to do, but as I've mentioned, it's just for like the vibe and the hot spa resort and stuff like that. So despite it being my favorite place, it's not necessarily the place with a lot going on. So that concludes today's episode. Thank you for coming back. Wherever you're tuning in from, wherever in the world, on whatever platform, wherever you might be, whatever you might be doing, on your jogs, your morning or evening commute, whatever, hello and thanks for coming back. Honestly, whilst you're bored and sat there clearly with nothing better to do than to listen to this podcast, then why not give it a review? I really appreciate you guys reviewing this podcast. We are on episode 9 and some really nice reviews have been popping up on Spotify. That's the platform that I use. And it's just been really lovely to see. After all, this podcast is for you all. So if you're happy, I am happy. But please let me know you're happy, because if you're happy, I don't know you're happy. But I'd really like to know. So thank you very much for tuning in again, and tune in for next week where I have a very special guest, Greg, and we chat about air cardio.